Winx Club. My 6 closest childhood friends, the girls who are the reason I am the way I am today, and a franchise that's so near and dear to my heart that Netflix has decided to completely and totally ruin. I have a lot of nostalgia attached to the Winx Club. I first discovered them in 2004 thanks to the iconic Everything Girl website. I'd spend hours clicking around on their toxic pink homepage, I'd do click and drag tours of the Althea dorm rooms, and watch actual full-length episodes on the website. It was harder to find Winx Club merchandise in the UK, so on a family trip to Disneyland, Florida in 2005, I was so much more excited to track down the Winx Club dolls than I ever was to see Disney princesses. And I'll always remember the inside of that giant Toys R Us, RIP, and how we managed to get 2 versions of each doll because bless our parents for thinking that we couldn't share so that we could have them dressed up in their magical girl outfits and their civilian clothes. They are the most gorgeous dolls I own, some of my most prized possessions even 16 years later. I'll always regret not still having the wing-shaped packaging that they came in because there wasn't space in the luggage for it. If I wasn't either on the website, watching the TV show, or role-playing with the dolls, I was playing the iconic Game Boy game, which charted the first season plot. Mostly you would play as Bloom, but there were some occasions where you got to play as the other girls, particularly in the battle sequences, if Bloom lost her 2 hearts. Because Flora was my favourite character, I'd always have to kill off both Bloom and Stella first before I could play her, so sorry girlies, but it was necessary. And there's a whole playthrough of the game on YouTube that I've watched many times because I lost the charger to my DS. But my love for the Winx Club did not diminish as I got older, and in 2016 I used my adult money to buy an Althea playset that I'd coveted as a child that was just too expensive. But my parents did let me get the figurines at the time, so whilst they would have been impossible to track down, I did manage to get the Althea playset, and look, it's gorgeous! Like, there's so much detail to this. As far as the actual cartoon, there are so many different dubs of the Winx Club from the original Italian version that I think the characterization of the girls and even the plot of the stories can be wildly different. So the Winx Club that I am nostalgic for and the one I will be referencing and talking about is the 4Kids dub. I have watched other dubs of this show, but none have captured the exact personalities of the characters, in my opinion, more than 4Kids. I think that the voice actors do such a fantastic job of giving the girls unique personalities, and Techna's British accent is completely unparalleled. So I watched the first 3 seasons of the show absolutely religiously. I think this was when it was at its peak, when the girls were unlocking their Charmix and their Enchantix transformations. I dipped in and out of season 4 when they went to Earth, and then went right back into it in season 5 because they'd unlocked some kind of magical underwater fairy transformation called Harmonix. But as soon as they started playing with a more 3D animation for the Sirenix transformation, they lost me again. And I have tried to watch a few of the more recent episodes, but I just think that it's become a little bit too repetitive in style. It's more monster of the week for me and less about the overarching narratives. It's such a strong power that the main villains of the TV show, a coven of witches called the Tricks, want to capture it for themselves and use it to take over the universe. The stakes are really that high. They actually managed to capture it as well. They're really good villains, and within the first third of the first season, they've captured a part of the Dragonfire, leaving Bloom in her mortal state for more than half the series, as she has to go on this emotional journey to realise that the power has been inside her all along and that she never truly lost it. Following this spirit guide that's in her dreams and visiting the desolate site of her palace. Just your classic power discovery that every magical girl must go through. I find it so hilarious that in the cartoon, Bloom is almost aware of her position as the main character.
This may sound totally self-centered and all.
It is all about you. To begin with, you've just got Flora, Stella, Musa, and Techna as Bloom's best friends at Althea. They have powers over nature, the sun and the moon, music, and technology retrospectively, and form the core of the Winx Club. The girls don't have as strong a storyline as Bloom does. That's not to say that they don't have things going for them. In the cartoon, Stella's parents are recently divorced and she's struggling with that. Musa is grieving for her mother's death, and Flora spends most of the season trying to retransfigure a witch who turned into a pumpkin, and there's lots of chemistry between them. So, you know, different struggles, but it's all still there. I can only assume that Fate, the Winx Saga, will follow a similar arc to the first season in just being about Bloom discovering her powers. Wait, let me check my notes. Yep, I think that's it. With all of my nostalgia covered, let's dive into the reboot, shall we? First of all, and most obviously, the cast barely resembles the Winx Club that we love. I'd say in terms of appearance that Bloom, Stella, and Aisha are really accurate, besides the horrid outfits, and we'll get to their personalities later, but Flora and Techna are non-existent. It's okay, baby, you're still important to me. And at least Musa is still a character, but to say that she resembles the Musa from the TV show is pretty much like saying Baby Bell tastes like cheese. Flora has actually been replaced and had her powers transposed onto this new character called Terra, who is a plus-size actor, but exchanging one kind of representation for another just is not good. The whitewashing is beyond disgraceful and unforgivable, especially since from the very beginning, half of the girls have been coded as women of colour. Justice for them. There have been so many videos talking about this as the main issue of the reboot, so I'm going to leave links to those in the description. All I know is modern magical girl stylings of the Winx Club is Feel Special era twice. So casting and styling aside, there's so much more to talk about in this reboot. Bearing in mind I've only seen a couple of trailers and I'll probably reflect back on this once I've watched the whole series. So let's talk about romance. Romantic relationships are built into the Winx Club. They're all disappointingly heterosexual and damaging to my little asexual self, but that's for another video. Like a doll line, the cartoon worked that there was a male equivalent for each of the Winx Club. In the first season, there are 4 specialists. Because Techno got the chop, it seems only likely that Timmy will suffer the same fate as her male counterpart, but that still leaves 3 very important characters. Sky was meant for Bloom, Brandon for Stella, and Riven for Musa. The cartoon plays with this really interesting Prince and the Pauper dynamic between Sky, a prince, and Brandon, his squire. Sky, wanting to experience what it's like to be just a regular guy, switches places with Brandon, and it isn't until 17 episodes through the first season that we figure out who they really are as they go by each other's names and swap lifestyles. Lying about your identity is therefore built into Bloom's relationship with Sky and causes one of their big issues. And for Stella, who is the Princess of Solaria and thought that she was also dating royalty with Brandon, then has to come to terms with the fact that he's a civilian and that complicates her match. Also with Bloom, she then has to meet Diazbro, Sky's fiance. Yeah, he forgot to mention that one. He's engaged. And there would have been enough juice in the whole show if it was just focused on those 4 characters and everything that was happening with them. Instead, in Fate the Winx Saga, we get this, which seems to be a love triangle between Bloom, Stella, and Sky, Brandon completely out of the picture. I cannot tell you how much I hate the effect that this will have on Stella's character, who is arguably Bloom's closest friend in the original TV show, as Bloom realizes that she has powers when she saves Stella from a ghoul attack, and it's Stella that takes her to Althea and introduces her to the magical world. I really fear that they're leaning into a boy-stealing mean girl angle for Stella that does not match her sunny and exuberant personality from the cartoon.
It's like you said, Stella. Why would anyone want to cheat on me?
Even more troublesome is Precious, the actress for Aisha, said about Hannah, the actress for Stella, that she's the complete opposite of her character, that Hannah is really lovely. What does that mean Stella is? Yes, in the cartoon, Stella can be a little bit outspoken and put her foot in it sometimes when she's talking about the fashions of her best friends. They always know that she's saying it with good intentions, she just has different priorities to them. Plus, I think that a love triangle between members of the Winx Club completely goes against their dynamic. They are above fighting over boys.
Come on, the boys! They can't protect you like us!
They're above fighting with boys. The 3 different character types in the Winx Club universe are fairies, witches, and specialists. Specialists are heroes, they're called that in the show, but I don't think that their pairing with the fairies ever detracts from the fairies' power. There's always a real sense of teamwork rather than superiority when they're saving each other. So the one thing I managed not to internalize about this show is that girls are meant to be rescued by boys. And you know, maybe the girls will do most of the rescuing.
I'll protect you.
More likely it'll be me who protects you!
So no stinky boy is going to come between this. In the cartoon, Flora'S love interest isn't introduced until the 2nd season, so we get a whole 26 episodes of seeing her just being completely happy by herself and fulfilled that way. But her love interest Helia is the best boy by association to Flora. He's a gentle soul and a pacifist. And I think that Fate the Winx Saga tries to fill this gap of Helia and Flora by giving Terra a love interest in Dane, a new specialist that we know really nothing about, but there is one scene of them sharing some extended eye contact in the trailer and it did make my heart flutter a bit, so I have high hopes that this will turn into another interracial romance for the show. It might be the teeniest tiniest crumb, but I will make a meal out of it. But still, I'm always thinking about them. This is a Flora and Helia stan account. Actually, this has been living rent-free in my brain for the last 13 years. This is going to sound incredibly niche, but all of the romances in the Winx Club are intrinsically linked to the Cascadia song Every Time We Touch for the sheer number of edits I watched in 2007 of romantic clips set to that song. If you were a fan in 2007, you know. I have Musa and Riven to thank for first introducing me to the ideas of toxic relationships and emotional abuse. They had an almost enemies to lovers dynamic and spent so many episodes and seasons of the show in this on and off again state of deciding whether they were gonna let each other in or realise that they weren't right for each other. It's just the same cycle of hurt, and other characters call them out on it.
Musa wants to go out with Riven, but he was so mega rude last week.
And now as an adult, I can reflect on their relationship and realise that there are a lot of flaws, but that's something I actually give huge credit to the Winx Club for. It shows you different kinds of romantic relationships, so much so that I think each couple actually represents a different love language. Stella and Brandon as physical touch, Bloom and Sky as quality time, Flora and Helia as words of affirmation. You know, maybe I'm really onto something there. Maybe the heads do have rights. So if a love triangle belongs anywhere in the show, it's between Musa and Riven and a member of the Tricks. Especially in the first season of the cartoon, this is Darcy. She poses a huge threat to Musa. She is someone that grabs Riven's attention through quite nefarious means. She's very manipulative and uses her powers to control Riven. I think it's an interesting choice that Musa in Fate the Winx Saga doesn't have power over music but is instead an empath. The description of her powers seems so much more similar to what Darcy's powers were in the cartoon. The trailer very much gives us the sense that Musa and Riven will be one of the main ships of the show, with Beatrix, who is like a culmination of all of the members of the Tricks Coven, as a foil to that. And if anything, this relationship dynamic is much closer to the canon than I could have ever expected, so I've got quite high hopes for how this plays out on screen. When the girls aren't all wrapped up in their romances, probably the very core of the Winx Club is the power of friendship between all of the girls. And in the first trailer, I wasn't really getting much of a sense of that, but in extended trailers, I feel much more at ease with the fact that they're going to take the friendship dynamic very seriously. You know, forgetting the potential rivalry between Bloom and Stella. We see clips of the girls hugging and supporting each other in school and in battle, which captures the exact vibe of the original Winx Club, and I love it. Like, you literally cannot watch probably 5 episodes of the Winx Club cartoon without the girls having some kind of heartfelt moment declaring their love for one another. There are so many cheerleader hands-in group hug moments, and you just couldn't call this show the Winx Club without that. Also, one of the most intriguing things is that we see Beatrix as almost like the 6th member of the Winx Club with electrical powers to further dunk on the fact that Techna could have completely filled that space. And I think this is slightly more nuanced. As I said before, magic is split between fairies and witches. Fairies are the magical girls that use their powers for good and witches for evil. And I like the fact that in having Althea being a school that combines Cloud Tower and Red Fountain, that there's not so much of a black and white divide between who's good and who's bad. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of double crossing element where Beatrix starts out as a friend, and as she realizes her powers more and the potential of Bloom's powers, chooses the dark side. And also, Winx Club the cartoon has never been afraid to talk about how the fairies' powers could be used for evil, as in a later season we get to experience Dark Bloom and what happens when her power corrupts. But I think that's the area of the show where I'm going to be most surprised. But then again, the short runtime of it only being 6 episodes means they're not really going to have enough time to develop these characters. I really hope that the episodes are at least an hour long to really give you the chance to get to know them. So the only other thing that has really been bugging me about this reboot is the setting. I have one thing to say, and it's this: Althea is just not pink enough. We went from this very palace to this. And if you research pictures of the filming location on Google, then you come up with these amazing shots of it looking like this gorgeous wedding venue with domed ceilings, conservatories, and lots of windows that would have given it that light touch, but instead we've got the classic CW dark gritty filter, which means you basically have to squint to see anything. So those are my cautious thoughts on the reboot. I'm very fearful for what they're going to do to all of my favourite characters, the damage that they've already done, but now I'm hopefully going to try and see it as a separate entity and critique it not for what it could have been, but for what it is. Let me know in the comments what you think of Fate the Winx Saga. If you're a fan of the Winx Club as a kid like me, how you feel about every single part of it. I know this was a slightly different video for me. I've never really done this kind of essay format before, but if I was going to start making video essays, it was going to be about the Winx Club. And if Netflix dare touch Witch, then you will see me right back here again. Be sure to check out my bibliography in the description. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.